Chapter 13, June 14th, 2033, Seattle, Washington, USA. 4th floor, Eleni Building. Negative 44 degrees Fahrenheit, 1230 hours. Silence is often mentioned, but rarely do people actually experience it. Even in this newly dead world, it wasn't totally silent. Wind howled on the other side of the windows, accompanied by debris slamming away. The winds outside were still at gale force, causing untold damage to the city beyond our little sheltered building. Even so, the silence weighed on the mind. I had heard the phrase oppressive silence before, but had never really come to understand it until I stood in a massive store that should have had hundreds of people quietly talking and shopping. It was so quiet inside the store that I could hear Gino 2 floors above, picking through clothing racks. I could hear Hillary sweeping products off of shelves. Larry was grunting as he continued to swing at the door. As I listened, something cracked. A shriek of metal sounded, then something dropped, probably a sledgehammer. The shriek of metal must have been the shutter or door giving way. The silence was so profound I could hear Larry quietly rattling bottles of medication a moment later. A few aisles from the cleared area, I found sturdy framed hiking backpacks on display. There was a surprising variety. Then again, people in Seattle loved hiking. I removed the 2 pre-built backpacks from their display racks and moved them over to the staging area. I went back to grab 2 additional backpacks, but they would have to be built. Then I started gathering small tents, no larger than 2-person tents. It would be cramped, but we only had so much floor space to work with. I had already moved the first half dozen when something caught the corner of my eye. Unbelievably, the store had not 1 but 2 camp showers. They were neatly boxed up, 3.5 feet long by 6 inches on a side. I carried them back to the staging area and read over one of the boxes. The showers were crude, 4 PVC pipes with connections allowing 3.5 feet of room. Nylon covers gave privacy, and it stood just shy of 7 feet tall when fully constructed. It did not come with a water system, but looking at the shower on the box gave me an idea. I took off jogging over to the hardware section. I grabbed duct tape and stout tin snips. Then I found the section with vacuums. I removed as many hoses as I could without causing undue damage. They came in all sorts of shapes and sizes, but they all were roughly 1 inch to 1.5 inches wide. I wore the duct tape on my wrist like a terrible bracelet, stuffed the tin snips in my back pocket, and gathered the hoses up in my arms. As I walked back to the staging area, I saw a light waving around. As I rounded the last corner, I saw Gino standing in the center of the mess he'd made, starting to pile clothes on the tables. He turned and shined his light directly at me, partly blinding me for a second. I heard him mutter, "What the fuck?" "I am Cthulhu!" I waved my armful of tentacles at him for emphasis. He chuckled, shaking his head. "You're a damn fool, Dante. What are those for, anyway?" "Years ago, in a previous life, I guess, I lived in an apartment. I was home, just falling asleep when I heard a bang and then some insane sound coming from my bathroom. I got up, flicked on the lights, and discovered a pipe had blown in my bathroom, causing water to come gushing out. I grabbed the hose off my vacuum," and I held up one of the hoses for emphasis. "Then I stuck one end over the pipe and the other into the toilet. The water just gushed straight into the toilet and hardly leaked at all, until management could shut off the water to my unit. So I think we should take a few hoses, tape them together, and tape one into the faucet at one of the sinks. The other end gets fixed to the shower, and we have hot water for actual showers." Yeah, that's pretty fucking clever, man." "Thanks. Let's go find the other 2 and start planning out what we're going to take back." "Hey, I haven't found any good winter stuff yet. Probably in the back stock." "Yeah, all right. Let's find them and then tackle that." Gino and I started over to the stairs for the 2nd floor. We could hear plenty of plastic crinkling and pills in bottles. Both Larry and Hillary were still hard at work. As I put my hand on the railing out of habit, I realized I could still feel the chill through my gloves. I pulled my hand back and tried to massage some warmth back in. "Damn, that's freezing. We should try to find some hand warmers too. I doubt they'll have them, but it can't hurt to look." Gino grunted behind me, either from walking up the stairs or in response to my rambling. He was keeping up pretty well, despite the nasty fall he had taken earlier that morning. For that matter, both he and Hillary had been keeping up without complaint. My respect for them grew a little more when I reflected on that. We crested the stairs and started walking back toward the pharmacy. Sounds could still be heard from the battered doorway. I got a better look as we closed in. A sledgehammer was lying near the door. It had a big 5 stamped on the side of the head. The metal door was badly dented near the middle, biased toward the handle. The frame clearly had some warping as well, possibly to help loosen the cold door. I poked my head in and heard Larry quietly muttering to himself. Bottles continually flew from the aisle he was in toward the desk, landing with a satisfying rattle in a large basket. There were 3 baskets on the counter. "Nice shot, Larry. How's it going?" The muttering stopped, then he poked his head around the corner. "Fine. You, need any help?" "No." "Okay, well, we'll be back." I backed away. He was focused and not in the mood to deal with people in his way. This time, only a grunt answered me. I looked at Gino and we both set off to find Hillary. We found her surprisingly nearby. She was still focused on hygiene with a large basket full to the brim. She was grabbing bulk packages of everything she could. A pile stood at the end of the aisle that she occasionally threw products to. She was glancing at whatever was in her hand before tossing it into the pile or back into the already emptied shelves. "Hills, how's it going?" I asked her. She looked at me blankly. "Hills, you good?" She shook her head as if to clear it.
"Yeah, sorry. Guess I was just super focused."
"I think you've got enough products picked out," I said with a small wave at the mountain behind her. She turned and looked.
Yeah, I guess I do."
"Let's get all that over the railing to the staging area, then we can focus on the warehouse." She nodded.
"Why the warehouse?"
"Winter stuff. Gino said it's all probably in back stock in there," I said with a glance to confirm. Gino nodded in affirmation. Hillary blankly accepted and walked over to the pile. I shrugged before Gino and I joined her. We started tossing everything over the railing to the floor below. It was a 10 or 15-foot fall, but nothing sounded like it broke when it landed. "Right, let's grab everybody and check the warehouse out," I said. Hillary nodded, her eyes slowly finding focus. "Yo, Larry, let's go!" I heard him drop what he was doing. I headed down the stairs to our staging area. Once we were all gathered, I broke down the plan. "The warehouse is probably huge. I think it takes up a third of the floor space of all 3 floors. So we need all 4 of us to search it. The rest of the stuff can wait. The cold is killing me." They nodded and we set off to the back of the store. The back wall had several entrance points to the warehouse-like area beyond. I walked through the nearest. The entire area was open with hundreds of shelves in rows. They all held boxes. Each box was stenciled with words in black ink. I walked to the nearest rack and shined my flashlight on the box. Swimwear. Didn't even specify a gender or size. I wasn't hopeful. "This is gonna take a while, guys. Let's split up and tackle sections. One of us is likely to find something in here."
"Yeah, all right. I'll head up to the next floor. You with me, Gino?"
Hillary asked as she started to walk away.
"Yeah, Hills."
He jogged lightly behind her. I turned my attention to Larry. "I'll take the left half and you take the right?" I asked him. He nodded and walked to the far end. I started searching through the boxes at the center lane and started moving on toward the opposite end from Larry. The beam of light swept over box after box. I was having no luck. I ended up in the electronic goods backstock, which was worthless to us. Half an hour passed when I finally heard a shout. I felt relief since I was staring at more hygiene products.
"Hey, get over here!"
Gino's voice echoed through the still air. I hustled to the stairs nearby and walked up. My face ached from the severe cold. Gino stood proudly in front of several stacks of boxes. Larry was nearby, pulling more from the shelves. Gino kicked the nearest box to face it toward me. I shined my light to check what the stenciling said. Coats, winter, men's. Jackpot. Nice find, Gino. He nodded, beaming. His face was ruddier than normal from the cold. His nose was running, though the air was so cold the snot froze at the tip of his nose. My nose was doing the same. Hillary was helping Larry organize the boxes. We found a dozen boxes altogether. They were evenly split, with 4 boxes of men's coats, 4 women's, and 4 children's. They were heavy, weighing 70 pounds each. Larry tore open one of the boxes with the larger sizes printed on the side. The coats were sealed in plastic to help fit them in the box. He tore one open and it immediately puffed up. He put it on top of the lighter jacket he was wearing. I could hear the fabric crinkling as ice cracked from the sudden movement. Gino and I grabbed coats for ourselves. I was still shivering lightly despite the many layers I wore. The new jacket went on nicely over the lighter jacket. Soon I was more comfortable than I had been since darkness had fallen. Hillary also opened a jacket and put it on. Then Larry and I started carrying the boxes out to the staging area. It was likely we wouldn't be needing all of the coats immediately, but having them on hand would make subsequent trips much easier. They were substantially heavier than anything that had been stocked in the office. Once all of the coats were relocated, we checked the same area once more. Thankfully, we were lucky again. A final set of 2 boxes were labeled Winter Accessories. I opened it up and pulled out ski masks. My face was aching and starting to numb in the cold. I ripped one open, took my beanie off, and pulled the mask over my head. Once it was properly situated, I put my beanie back on, then put the hood up from the heavy jacket. The reaction was slow, but eventually I could feel my nose and ears start to grow warm, with pins and needles shooting painfully through my skin. My nose began to run again. The other 3 had done the same and were making small noises of appreciation and pain as sensation returned. "All right, let's get these back to the staging area, then let's eat," I said. Gino, Hillary, and Larry all nodded. Larry and I each picked up a box and walked back to the staging area. "I'm starving. I think I saw trail rations in the camping area." I began to walk over as the others wearily nodded and sat. We still had a long hike ahead of us and would need good food for energy. I wandered back to the camp supplies area. There was an entire aisle dedicated to camp foods. They were usually fairly flavorful and packed with calories and nutrients, like an MRE but lighter. I grabbed an armful of freeze-dried packs. Then I found a camping stove and propane and a gallon of water. I juggled everything and brought it back to the staging area. I set up the stove and got it started. I put the flame to high and set the water jug near the flame to thaw it. Once it was going, I headed back to the camping supplies and found a good-sized pot. I brought that back and put it on the stove. Once the water was thawed enough, I poured what was melted into the pot to bring it to a boil. I grabbed the first bag of food and ripped it open. Inside, I saw a mass of eggs with peppers. It looked good, and my stomach rumbled in anticipation. Once the water was at a rolling boil, I dumped water into each bag in turn. They were resealed, and I tucked mine inside my jacket. Warmth radiated from the bag. We waited impatiently for the food to finish rehydrating. Larry wandered off for a moment, coming back with a pack of frozen water bottles. Some had split, but a few were only swollen with ice. We dug the unbroken bottles out and set them near the stove to thaw. We chatted a little bit to pass the time. Gino told us he brewed beer and had an amazing setup for it. Larry, though normally terse and quiet, used to do stand-up. He even told us a handful of jokes and had us rolling with laughter. Suddenly, a pain shot through my head. I clutched at my temples, seeing the others act similarly. I chalked it up to the cold. "Damn, dude, don't be so funny. It hurts." Larry grunted at my comment. We calmed down a bit. I took one of the thawed bottles of water and cracked it open. I tried the water, finding it cold but not freezing. I greedily drank half the bottle, stopping only when the cold became too much. Hillary had been a rancher in Texas years before, but left it to her family so she could go to college. About 15 minutes passed, and I checked on my food. I gave it a good stir and started chowing down with a plastic spoon. It was by no means a 5-star meal, but I was so hungry it didn't matter. I involuntarily made a groan of appreciation. The others mocked me and groaned as well. We all busted out laughing, breath fogging in the frozen air. Then hunger made us all refocus. For the next few minutes, the only thing we did was devour the food. Once I was done, I sat back for a few minutes. The others did as well.
You know, it's strange,
said Hillary.
We've been all over this store and a good chunk of the building, but we haven't really seen a bunch of people. I mean, the store was locked up. I checked the front doors. There were a few people frozen out there against the doors, but there are none in here.
Gino answered after a moment.
Well, we did find that fire escape door that was open, and we haven't checked the parking garage. It could be full for all we know.
That dark thought settled over us and killed the conversation. It was strange. I had expected to find bodies everywhere, but instead we found emptiness and silence. Soon enough, I decided contemplation could only get us so far. I stood and started to organize. The others followed suit.